So hello everyone. This class will be about vocabulary usage. This topic will have two parts. So today I'm going to do part one, and then tomorrow we're going to do part two. So a disclaimer about this class is that it is going to be given in sort of a list format. We're going to go sort of case by case, looking at different instances where we have to choose between 2 or 3 usages of words and see which one is correct in each instance and why. Without further ado, let's begin. So the first case that we have is a lot versus a lot altogether. And here, what we do is very easy because only a lot written as 2 separate words is correct. So the other one is not really a word. And we use a lot to mean a great amount or number of something, as in, I have a lot of problems right now. A while versus a while. So this is interesting because they're actually both correct in different instances. So I'm going to try to explain each as best I can. The word while can be combined with for a or in a while to make a prepositional phrase. And whereas the word a while altogether is an adverb and does not take any prepositions. So the funny thing is, though we have these two ways of expressing, sort of using the word while, they both are interchangeable in meaning, actually, for a while and a while. So look at these two examples. Let's stay for a while and let's stay a while. They both mean the exact same thing. There's just two different ways of writing it out. Okay, this one is accept versus accept. These words aren't really all that similar. However, they're similarly written and they sound similar, so that can make their usage confusing. So the first word, accept with an A, is a verb and it means to agree or to receive, as in, I accept your apology. Whereas accept with an E is a preposition which means leaving out but, as in, they are all terrible except for Sasha. I hope that's clear. Adapt versus adopt. They're both verbs, and this is kind of a more complicated case because they actually both mean similar things. Adapt means to change or adjust, whereas adopt means to take or accept. So to really make the distinction clear, I wrote one sentence that contains both words that will hopefully help you understand sort of the nuances that make both of them different from the other. So the bullfrog has adopted or taken or accepted some traits that allowed it to adapt, change, adjust to its new environment. Well, I hope that makes sense because sadly, this is not live and I can't take any questions. Moving on. Advice versus advise. So this is very similar. And these two words are close in meaning. They just are different in function, really. Advice is a noun, which means a helpful suggestion, as in, let me give you a word of advice. Correct? Whereas advise is a verb, and it means to give or offer counsel. But I mean, let's be honest, it actually means to give or offer advice. I mean, advice is what you offer when you advise someone. So yeah, advice with an S would be used, for example, in she advised me to stay away from him. She gave me advice to stay away from him, sort of, is what it's saying. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Let's move on now to affect versus effect. This is complicated. They sound really similar. I think I even pronounced them sort of the same. Um, and they actually do mean similar things. People confuse them all the time. And so let's go into effect with an A first. This is a verb and it means to influence, as in her story deeply affected my perception of her plight. Her story deeply influenced my perception of her plight. Sorry. I hope that makes sense. And let's go to effect with an E now. So effect with an E has two different usages. And the one we really care about here, the one that's confusing, is the verb usage, which means to bring about or achieve. And as you can see, influencing and bringing about, though they're different, they're not entirely, unrelated concepts. They're kind of similar. That's why it's so confusing to use them sometimes. So let's see this example. My dream is to affect lasting change in our system. So here, my dream is to affect or bring about lasting change in our system. The way I distinguish these two is I replace the word by their synonyms to see if they still make sense. And if not, it's probably the other choice. So let's do that with the first sentence. Her story deeply affected my perception of her plight. Her story deeply brought about or achieved my perception of her plight. Really does not fit. So we know it's the other option, influence. Whereas the second sentence, my dream is to influence lasting change, that doesn't necessarily sound so wrong, but it is, because one does not influence change, the one brings about or makes change happen. So it's a question of what is the most precise verb to take that object. And it's sort of a fine skill that you'll have to work on. I hope I made myself as clear as possible. The second possible usage of the word effect with an E is a noun, and it means result. So my actions will have a lasting effect on society. This is the most common usage of the word effect with an E. And it's the one we know in Spanish as efecto. So yeah, it's the literal translation. Right, let's move on to, this little disclaimer. Ain't is not a correct form of usage. Ain't, we should not use it in formal English because it's not a correct contraction of anything, really. So just refrain from using it in formal writing. Yeah. Already versus already. So already, in 2 words, is an adjective, which means entirely ready or prepared, as in I'm all ready to begin the test. It's sort of the same meaning as all set. Okay. My throat's kind of dry. Okay, let's move on to already, which is all together, and it's an adverb. So what it means is before some specified time. Make the test begin already. So what it's saying is make the test begin like right now is sort of what it is. Does that make sense? I'm not gonna wait for you to answer because you can't. So yep, moving on. All together, separated, pun intended, and all together, which is written all together. Again, pun intended. So when we write all together as 2 words, it means in a group, as in we are all together in this mess. Whereas all together as 1 word means completely or thoroughly. So all together, we had a great time. Suppose I was writing a paragraph where I was describing all these good things that happened this evening. Say I went to the zoo with my friend and I talk about how we saw the giraffes, how we played with the monkeys, how we fed the pelicans, how we had this great sandwich in a little, stop, like safari stop or whatever. it doesn't really matter. The point is, I could conclude that paragraph by saying, all together, all of these positive experiences together, sort of compounding it all up and making it into a little ball that describes how it went overall. All together, we had a great time. Hope that makes sense. All right, let's move on to almost versus most. This is not actually too difficult because they're not really, you probably shouldn't confuse this too much. It's just that they're written similar. But anyway, almost is an adverb, as in she sings almost as well as her sister. And most is an adjective. She is the most talented person in this room. Yeah, that should be pretty clear. Let's move on to although versus though. They both mean in spite of the fact, and they can be used interchangeably. So there's not much of a science here. I just wanted to sort of point this out to you guys so you know that either one is correct. Let's look at these two examples. They're the same sentence, and I used each of those choices to see that the meaning is retained. Although the style is quite unconventional, it somehow feels like a classic. Though the style is quite unconventional, it somehow feels like a classic. So in both of these cases, the meaning is clear. I'm saying, despite the style being weird and unconventional, it somehow works, right? Both sentences are clearly understood to have that meaning. So they're interchangeable. Okay, let's move on to among versus between. Among, and just before I get into the specific cases, they both work as prepositions of comparison. So the difference between the both of them is how many groups or how many items they are comparing. Among compares groups of persons or things, which means three or more, as in consensus could not be reached among the involved parties. So suppose there's like a lot of different groups of people that have to come to an agreement. So we say among, okay, because there's a lot of people. And it gives us sort of this image of like around the room, consensus around the room. Whereas between compares only two items at a time. So it gives us the sense of there being two sides, and between them, there's this agreement. The red and blue team, sorry, this sentence was phrased wrong, actually. An agreement was reached between the red and blue team. The match cannot be postponed until further notice. Oh my God, never mind. The match would be postponed until further notice. I read that completely wrong. Okay, but I hope that was clear. I think it's not entirely difficult to understand once it's explained like this. Amount versus number. So amount is used for things that can be measured or weighed, but not counted, such as love or tension or water. Those are things you can measure or weigh, sort of, but you can't count. So look at this example. There is a great amount of tension in the air. Can't count it, but there's a lot. Okay, so number is used for things that can be counted. There is a large number of important people in the room tonight. So let's do this little exercise that we did with accept and accept. No, sorry, affect and effect, of changing the wording and seeing if it works on the other sentence. So there is a great number of tension in the air. Does that work? Yeah, not really, because you can't really count the tension that there is. So it's got to be amount. Whereas in the other one, there is a large amount of important people in the room tonight. So amount does work there, but it's not the best possible choice. I think the reason why it works is because amount is a little more vague. Because things that can be counted can also be measured or weighed, right? So it wouldn't be wrong to use amount for them. Whereas things that can be measured or weighed cannot always be possibly counted. So yeah. Moving on. And/or. It means either and or. and it's kind of confusing. So in general, avoid it. I have seen it written though, um, on books before. So avoid it. Little warning is not as strong as it would look. Just if possible, try and use something else because it can sort of look clunky or amateurish sometimes. So we use other strategies. Like if I say I want to buy croissants and or donuts, I maybe could go like and use a sort of stylistic choice of voicing my thoughts. Should I buy croissants or donuts? Instead of saying or both or something like that. Okay. Anyway, anxious versus eager. Both can mean strongly desirous, but they have different connotations. Anxious is more related to concern or worry, as in waiting for my mom to come out of the doctor's office is making me anxious. So it's making me concerned, it's worrying me. Whereas eager is more related to excitement, as in I'm eager to meet your family. So I'm excited. I'm not worried, I'm excited. Okay? Those are the little connotations and the sort of fine tuning that we need to be able to decide like which of any more versus anymore. So when we write it as two words, it describes quantity, as in we don't have any more seats left. Because the thing is, both words are um, employed to mean something by themselves. That's why it's different to the other one. On the second example, where it's used as one word, it is an adverb, and it means at present or from now on. So sort of the same sentence rewritten to fit this word choice. No seats are available anymore. Boom. Quite different. So as for these little three uses of the word were, we just a little notice, we do not use them in plural form. Never anywheres, no everywheres, and definitely no nowheres. Yeah, just singular. Not too much complication to it. Appraise versus apprise. These are similar and they're sort of higher level words, so they're kind of difficult to know how to use because mostly we don't know what they mean in the first place, right? So just a little confession, I did not know what a prize was before making this class. So but I do now. So yay. Appraise means to evaluate, as in she appraised the furniture. She observed the furniture and tried to analyze it, see how much it was worth. That's appraising. Whereas apprise without the A means to inform, as in the vice president was apprised of the developments in the NATO conference. All right, apt, liable, and likely. Apt and likely are interchangeable. They mean tending to or inclined to be, whereas liable suggests the probability of a negative event. So, yeah. Um, they both are used to suggest probability or tendency towards, but they have different connotations again, just like anxious and eager had. So the first example, this is likely to be our strongest appearance yet, suggests a positive probability. And the second example, we are liable to a lawsuit now because of the mistake you've made, is sort of giving more of a connotation of being exposed. We're exposed to a lawsuit now. Okay, as versus like. So this is one that you guys for sure need a little training on. Sorry. We use like as a preposition and as a preposition only in formal writing because like is commonly used as a crutch. Like, I mean, that kind of thing. Um, but we don't do that in formal writing, obviously. So the only way we use it is, as in this example, you're nothing like me. It's a preposition that indicates similarity. And we use as only as a conjunction. It introduces subordinate clauses, as in this example. As elegant as you are, you're not afraid to get your hands dirty. So, as for example, here works as a subordinating little phrase because it sort of means though you are elegant, you're not afraid to get your hands dirty in this case. That's what it means in this case. And though would also be a subordinating conjunction in that sort of usage. So great. Moving on. Bad and badly. Bad is an adjective, as in she is a bad figure skater. Badly is an adverb, as in she figure skates quite badly. I don't think there's a lot of deep meaning to this choice between bad and badly. Bad just describes a noun and badly describes a verb. Boom. Done. Moving on. Because versus on account of. So because is a subordinating conjunction that indicates cause, a causal relationship. So I know you're not lying. That is the independent, the end. Because I can see in your eye. Your eye, subordinate clause, because it indicates that this clause is the cause of the other. The cause of the clause. Sounds funny. Okay. On account of, it means because of or due to. So it's also a causal relationship. It's only that it takes an object. So it's because of something. This example, look at this example. On account of recent developments, we shall discontinue our campaign effective immediately. So what if we replace on account of with because? Because of recent developments. Bam. That's our meaning. Let's move on. Being as how, being that. No. And I've used them before, but they're wrong. And it reminds me of puesto que in Spanish. But I think puesto que is not wrong, but this is. We have better choices of words that we can use. We can use since, and we can use because, and we don't need to be wordier by using these being choices because there's more precise language to describe what we're trying to get at. Beside and besides. So beside is a preposition and it means next to. You can sit here beside me. Whereas here beside me. Whereas besides, we can also we can also compensate you better than they can. So besides use of the preposition would be something like this. They have a lot of apples, but they also have oranges besides that, in addition to that. Does that make sense? Okay, good. Moving on. Borrow, lend, and loan. It's tricky to me for sure. One borrows from someone and one lends to someone. It's all in the preposition. Is it coming from them to you, or is it coming from you to them? So if it's coming from them to you, you're borrowing. If it's coming from you to them, or to him or to her, you are lending. And something you lend or something you borrow, a loan, which is a noun, and I have wished like 1,000 times. I'm very, very sorry for the wordiness. I'm trying to get better at that. Both, either, and neither. So it's not a question of interchangeability here. It's a question of maintaining the parallel structure. So look at this example. And when I mean parallel structure, which is something we haven't learned yet, I mean maintaining the same function for the words that you're comparing. So look at this. I went to both Paris and Nice during my trip to France. So I kept them both at one word, proper noun. So for example, what would be wrong examples of the same sentence? I went both to Paris and Nice. That would be wrong because the word to Paris is not the equivalent of just Nice. It would have to be to Nice. Then another wrong example would be I went to both Paris and my house because they're not they don't have the same weight in the sentence. Paris is a proper noun and my house is not. So there's a hierarchy there that is not respected by the structure. So we should always try to keep with the parallel structure. Moving on to bring versus take. Bring means to carry to. I'll bring it over. Bring me all the leather you can find. Take means to carry away. Take her to the dungeon. Does that make sense? Cool. Can't help but. I've said this before many times, I think, and it's wrong. We do not modify. So in this example, I simply can't help getting anxious at a situation like this. Yep. All right, let's move on. Credible, creditable, and credulous. So there's a lot of credit going around here. Credible means believable, credibility, right? I would take his word for it. He's quite credible. Yeah. So it's believable. That's what it means. Creditable means worthy of recommendation. Amanda did a lot of creditable work during her time in El Salvador. So it's like it's work that was really good and was worthy of praise and recommendation. Okay? And the third word is credulous, which means gullible. Means someone who believes things really easily, things that he probably should know better than to believe. Someone that doesn't have a lot of common sense. So like this, I can't believe you thought the thief truly was a computer repairman. You're so credulous. I'm sorry, I wrote the wrong. Okay. Different from versus different than. Different from different from is correct. Is correct is a subordinate do. Yeah, as you can see, my internet is not really the best. So let's just pick up where we left off and pretend that didn't happen. Yeah. Okay. Good. Um, disinterested versus uninterested. Dis means unbiased and impartial, whereas uninterested means interest. Sorry. All right. There is not too much to explain here. So let's move on to the next. Double negatives. So we hate double negatives. Double negatives are something that we use, that we do a lot, but it's always wrong, because two negatives, if you've ever done math, negative times negative gives you positive. So why would it not be the same in writing, right? Using two negatives when one is sufficient is a mistake that we all do a lot. So look at this example. Doesn't nobody know how this works? No, it's wrong. Never do it. Doesn't anybody know how this works? Or does anybody know how this works? Okay, good. Double subject. Using noun as subject is wrong. So this is something that I've seen a lot of you guys do, so I'm watching you. Look at this example. My sister, she is the best person I know. Why is this wrong? Well, we've learned that pronouns are used to replace your subject, right? Often to avoid repetition, unnecessary repetition. But what are we doing here? We have our subject written out. So by introducing a pronoun after the subject, we're really just confusing everything. Because I mean, we're actually adding more of a repetition without, like, than we would have without using the pronoun, because the sentence was fine. My sister is the best person I know. That was fine. So we don't use the pronoun there. All right. Each and every. Each and every one of you guys, blah, 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 blah. I say this a lot. And it is an idiom, which means it's not wrong, but it's redundant in formal writing. So don't use it. I don't either. I just talk like that. And oh well. Like, I mean, it's fine in conversation, just not in formal writing. So EG and IE, these are, I mean, EG, you see it all the time in my, just because it's so much easier to write EG than writing, for example, for each example that I want to list out. So yeah, that's what it means. It means, for example. They both come from Latin, and I'm not going to try to remember because it really doesn't matter. IE is used as equivalent. So yeah, when you're trying to cite an equivalent to something, you write it out, comma, I dot E dot blah, 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 whatever it's equivalent to. Okay. Et al. Means see a lot when you read articles, and there's many authors. So they're gonna write the first and the second, or maybe just the first author and then comma et al, which means and all the others. Okay. Let's move on. ETC, etc. means and other things, or and so forth. So because in its meaning, the word and is already included, we do not use and etc. We just use comma, etc. Okay. Every day versus every day. So every day written as two words means each day. I wish I could see you every day. The meaning of both words is retained. Whereas the word everyday altogether means ordinary. So look at this example. So this is everyday life. Say whatever, it's like a princess that escaped from the castle for the first time and whatever. And she goes to, I don't know. You get the picture. She just like, oh, so this is everyday life. Okay. Yeah, enough of that. Moving on. Everyone versus everyone. Everyone means everybody or every person. as in I wish everyone could see this. I wish everybody could see this. I wish every person could see this. Sort of um, interchangeable meanings for those words. And the word everyone, written as two separate words, means each person or thing in a group. It's usually followed by the preposition of, as in every one of us has shown their worth in different ways. Each and every one of us, right? Which I told you was wrong. Which I told you was wrong usage. Yeah, so just use every one of us. Famous, noted, and notorious. Famous means renowned or celebrated, as in I will do anything I need to be famous. Noted means celebrated, which is kind of the same meaning, so I'm not going to like expand on that. Noted, we say, for example, when someone gives us a sort of observation and we try to be like ironic, we're like, okay, noted, shut up. Notorious means known widely and regarded unfavorably, as in Fatima is notorious throughout the country for the terrible things she has done. She is famous, but for all the wrong reasons. All right, moving on. This one, oh my God, this one is one that it took me a lot of time to get right, and I know a lot of people that do not. Farther means more distant in space, as in 1 hour, she has run farther than anyone's ever done before. So more distant in space, right? Just physical distance. Whereas further means more distant in time and degree, so additional. This case should be investigated further. So it should be investigated for more time and to an additional degree. The investigation should be more thorough, should cover more bases. That's when we use further. Okay. You all understand why we could not use these words interchangeably, right? So if we're using farther with an A in the second sentence, we would be saying the case should be investigated at a longer distance, which really does not make sense because an investigation is not measured in physical distance. Whereas if we use the word further in the first sentence, we would be saying she has run to a larger degree or more time, which really does not go well in sentence. So very similar, and they sound similar unless you're like very anal about pronouncing them correctly. So yeah, this will just be something that you'll have to sort of develop the skill to distinguish. Fewer versus less. Fewer means things that is used for things that you can count individually. As in, we've had fewer instances of theft ever since you've been in charge. Less means quantity, or is used for quantities that you can't count. Also time, money, and distance. Because they're sort of, even though you can't count them, they're sort of understood as a compound distance, a compound time, and a compound money sum. As in, honestly, I love you less than I did yesterday. So love is not something that you can count. So you can sort of measure it as in like the amount of love. So you can say, I love you less than I did yesterday. Not, I love you fewer. I give you fewer loves than I did yesterday. That's kind of weird. So yeah, moving on. Figuratively and literally. Figuratively means said in a metaphorical manner, as in Lucia is a rising star. She is the gift that keeps on giving. Lucia is not, she's a person, but we compare her to a rising star because she shines, which is also not something that Lucia actually does. These are all metaphorical interpretations of how we emotionally process what Lucia is doing, that Lucia is doing a good job, right? she is the gift that keeps on giving. She's obviously not an actual gift. People are not property. So these are like emotional interpretations that we use metaphors to express. Literally means stating a fact, as in Lucia has closed more deals than anyone this past year. So these two sentences are sort of just both the same thing, but looking at it from an emotional perspective or a literal perspective, stating a fact. So Lucia has closed more deals than anyone this past year, which means she has worked harder and achieved more than anyone else this past year. And because of that, she is a rising star. Emotionally, we interpret her as sort of a shining rising star or a gift that keeps on giving us results, right? Okay, moving on. Former versus latter. This is used a lot in academic writing because sentences tend to be very long. So you have to be able to understand how this works. When we have two items, so let's say my sentence is, Selena went skiing on both the Alps and the Himalayas. I don't even know if skiing in the Himalayas is possible, but just entertain my example for a second. So I would say in the former, she had a lot of fun because she had some friends that she met on the way. Former makes reference to the first of the two things previously mentioned, which was the Alps. On the latter, however, she tripped and fell and had a knee injury, so she didn't really have a very good time. The latter is referring to the Himalayas because I listed two things. The former is the first and the latter is the second. Not too difficult, but very useful. Good and well. Good is an adjective, as in you are a good mother. Well is an adverb or a predicate adjective. So, and it means satisfactory or in good health. So as a predicate adjective, we write, she's doing well. Boom. Got and have. Got is the past tense of get, and it means obtained. And what we're addressing here with this little slide is that people use got incorrectly in place of have all the time. Like that famous song that I love, I got $20 in my pocket. And the thing is, got, I think at this point is definitely not wrong in conversation. I use it a lot because it's a cool informal way of saying it, and I like it. But when we write formally, we have to pay attention to the proper usage. So we cannot use it incorrectly in place of have. We write, I have $20 in my pocket. And if we're going to write it because we're quoting it or something, let's make sure that we're putting the quotation marks there for people not to believe that that's actually how we write a formal piece of writing. Okay? So if you're writing a personal essay, do not use got. Unless you're trying to quote someone or it's a specific stylistic choice that you need to use. Okay. The word ought. We use ought and ought not. We do not use had ought or hadn't ought. And yeah, there's not too much explanation about that. Just like remember it. Half a. So we write it two ways. Half a or a half, half an hour or a half hour. They're both correct. What is not correct, however, is a half an hour because we're using two articles and that is not correct. Hanged versus hung. So they are both past forms of the verb to hang, but hanged with an ed in the end refers to death by hanging exclusively, as in witches were hanged on the tree's main branch. And we use hung in every other case, as in I hung the towel on the hook beside the bathroom door. Have versus off. This really should not be something you guys get confused, but people do get it confused very, very often. especially in YouTube comments for some reason, um, sound similar, but they are not interchangeable, not in the least. I mean, have is a verb, then off is a preposition. That means like it pertains to something. I guess it also means ownership, but it's a preposition. So the way people write it wrong is I should off let you know about what was happening, because it sounds similar when we're saying it. I should have let you know about what was happening. You really don't know if I'm saying have or off. But the way we say it is I should have let you know. Keep that in mind. Please never write it the other way, because that will be kind of embarrassing for you to make that mistake. His self and their selves, never correct. Himself and themselves. That's how we say it. And that is our presentation for today, guys. Let us move on to today's little interactive activity. And our interactive activity is, for the first time, we'll actually begin working on the SAT. So I'm going to read this first passage from practice test number 1 and answer the questions and explain how I answered them. And then we'll see in the actual answer key if I got them right. Hope so, right? Should. But I might not, so who knows, right? All right. Akira came directly, breaking all tradition. Was that it? Had he followed form? Had he asked his mother to speak to his father to approach a go-between? Would she have been more receptive? He came on a winter's eve. He pounded on the door while a cold rain beat on the shuttered veranda. So at first, Chia thought him only the wind. The maid knew better. Chia heard her soft, scuttling footsteps, the creak of the door. Then the maid brought a calling card to the drawing room for Chie. Chie was reluctant to go to her guest. Perhaps she was feeling too cozy. She and Naomi were reading at a low table set atop the charcoal brazier. A thick quilt spread over the sides of the table so their legs were tucked inside with the heat. Who is it at this hour, in this weather? She questioned as she picked the name card off the maid's lacquer tray. Shinoda Akira, Kobe Dental College, she read. Naomi recognized the name. Chia heard a soft intake of air. I think you should go, said Naomi. Akira was waiting in the entry. He was in his early 20s, slim and serious, wearing the black military-style uniform of a student. As he bowed, his hands hanging straight down, a black cap in one, a yellow oil paper umbrella in the other, Chia glanced beyond him. In the glistening surface of the courtyard's rain-drenched paving stones, she saw his reflection like a dark double. Madame, said Akira, forgive my disruption, but I come with a matter of urgency. His voice was soft, refined. He straightened and stole a deferential peek at her face. In the dim light, his eyes shone with sincerity. Chia felt herself starting to like him. Come inside. Get out of this nasty night. Surely your business can wait for a moment or two. I don't want to trouble you. Normally I would approach you more properly, but I've received word of a position. I have an opportunity to go to America as a dentist for Seattle's Japanese community. Congratulations, Chia said with amusement. That is an opportunity, I'm sure, but how am I involved? Even noting Naomi's breathless reaction to the name card, Chie had no idea. Akira's message, delivered like a formal speech, filled her with maternal amusement. You know how children speak so earnestly, so hurriedly, so endearingly about things that have no importance in an adult's mind? That's how she viewed him, as a child. It was how she viewed Naomi. Even though Naomi was 18 and training endlessly in the arts needed to make a good marriage, Chie had made no effort to find her a husband. Akira blushed. Depending on your response, I may stay in Japan. I've come to ask for Naomi's hand. Suddenly, Chie felt the dampness of the night. Does Naomi know anything of your ambitions? We have an understanding. Please don't judge my candidacy by the unseemliness of this proposal. I ask directly because the use of a go-between takes much time. Either method comes down to the same thing, a matter of parental approval. If you give your consent, I become Naomi's Yoshi. We'll live in the house of Fuji. Without your consent, I must go to America to secure a new home for my bride. Eager to make his point, he'd been looking her full in the face. Abruptly, his voice turned gentle. I see I've startled you. My humble apologies. I'll take no more of your evening. My address is on this card. On my card. If you don't wish to contact me, I'll reapproach you in 2 weeks' time. Until then, good night. He bowed and left, taking her ease with effortless grace, like a cat making off with a fish. Mother, Chie heard Naomi's low voice and turned from the door. He has asked you? The sight of Naomi's clear eyes, her dark brows, gave Chie strength. Maybe his hopes were preposterous. Where did you meet such a fellow? Imagine. He thinks he can marry the Fuji heir and take her to America all in the snap of his fingers. Chie waited for Naomi's ripe laughter. Naomi was silent. She stood a full half-minute looking straight into Chie's eyes. Finally, she spoke. I met him at my literary meeting. Naomi turned to go back into the house, then stopped. Mother. Yes? I mean to have him. Okay, let's get into the questions. Which choice best describes what happens in the passage? I'll give the answer and justify why. So answer A, one character argues with another character who intrudes in her home. So what's wrong with this question, I believe, is first, there doesn't seem to be any argument. It's kind of clear that Akira is very respectful and Chie is sort of amused, but there's no animosity, there's no argument. And there also is no intrusion in her home. Akira is very respectful about how he approaches Chie, and he acknowledges that it's kind of unexpected, but he's never intruding. B, one character receives a surprising request from another character. I mean, that does sound like it for sure to me. It's pretty surprising for Chie to receive this request of taking Naomi's hen when she did not make any effort for that to happen at all. She had no idea that that was going to happen. And on top of that, the fact that Akira wanted to go to America, it was just like pretty surprising. One character reminisces about choices she has made over the years. We don't really see too much of a nod to the past. So yeah, there isn't really too much reminiscing. And D, one character criticizes another character for pursuing an unexpected course of action. This is the closest one to B, I'd say. But the course of action, though it was unexpected, it didn't ever generate a negative reaction. It was more an unexpected thing than a negative thing. And Chie never really criticizes him. At most, she sort of makes fun of him to Naomi, but that's as far as it goes. So yeah, B is the correct answer for number 1. I'm gonna write that down. 2, which choice best describes the developmental pattern of the passage? A careful analysis of a traditional practice. Yeah, that could be true. A detailed depiction of a meaningful encounter. That definitely sounds like it because there's a lot of details and the encounter is definitely meaningful. I mean, asking someone's hand for marriage is definitely qualifying on that list. A definitive response to a series of questions. That is definitely not the answer because there is no definitive response. There's only a request and then a bit of a little like interaction or reaction to it, but there's really no definitive response. A cheerful recounting of an amusing anecdote. Yeah, I mean, Chie may have found the anecdote amusing to a certain extent, but there was never a cheerful recounting. It was more of a description, as letter B said, a depiction, a detailed depiction. And if I had to choose between A and B, I would choose B because the focus of this is not in tradition. And also there's a clear nod to tradition not being followed in this instance. So we really don't analyze the traditional practice too much. So B, again, B and B. 3, as used in line 1 and line 3 means Akira came directly, breaking all tradition. That's line 1. And I asked directly because the use of a go-between takes much time. So they're both referring to the same thing. They're both referring to the fact that Akira did not use an intermediary. He had to sort of, the tradition protocol was him going through his mother or his father or whatever. I don't really understand how it works, but the point is he had to go through someone else, and then that person had to contact the mother, and there was this sort of like whole long process that he bypassed. And so directly most nearly means without mediation. Frankly, I mean, yeah, he's honest, but directly is not really referring to that frankness. Confidently, there is no nod made to his confidence with the word directly. And with precision, there's also no mention of that. The best choice is without mediation. So for number 3, the answer is C. Which reaction does Akira most fear from Chie? So letter A, she will consider his proposal inappropriate. I can see that for sure. He mentioned at some point something about that. B, she will mistake his earnestness for immaturity. I don't think he really makes any nod towards that. I think Chie makes a sort of judgment of Akira being a little immature because she found it amusing like a child, but he never expresses that he's worried about that. She will consider his unscheduled visit an imposition. I don't think there's any nod of that. He acknowledges that the visit is unexpected, but he's never afraid of her considering it an imposition because he makes it very clear that he's not trying to impose it on anyone, and he sort of throws the ball to their court for them to make the decision. D, she will underestimate the sincerity of his emotions. No, he's very sincere, he's very forthcoming. That is the one answer that I think is really, really wrong, because he is sincere and honest from beginning to end, and I don't think he's afraid of her misunderstanding that at all. So I believe the answer is B, or A, sorry, I think the answer is A. But let's go to the next question, because the next question asks us, which choice provides the best evidence for the answer to the previous question? So line 33, let's look at line 33. His voice was soft, refined. That really doesn't say anything about what he fears. I mean, no, it's too far-fetched to believe that that's evidence for anything in this question. Line 49 to 51. You know how children speak so earnestly, so hurriedly, so endearingly about things that have no importance in an adult's mind? Yeah, so there could be a case made for why this is evidence for B being the answer, of her mistaking his earnestness for immaturity. But the little trick here is that the question 4 was, which reaction does Akira fear most from Chie? And mistaking his earnestness for immaturity is something that actually happened. That's first. It actually happened. It's not just something he worried about. It actually happened, but he didn't know about it. We're asking what he was worried about. He wasn't worried about that. Chie thought that, but we should be really clear about who we're referring to. We're referring to what Akira feared, and there is no mention of him fearing this. So that's why B is incorrect, and why that evidence is also not the choice that I would make. 63 to 64. Please don't judge my candidacy by the unseemliness of this proposal. What this means is, please don't judge the validity of this proposition by me not following tradition, and by how unexpected or weird or that you get my gist. And that is the perfect evidence for A. And number 4, she will consider his proposal inappropriate. So that's the one I'm going for up to now. And line 71 to 72, eager to make his point, he'd been looking her full in the face. Yeah, so, I mean, I guess you could argue that's sort of evidence for letter D. She will underestimate the sincerity of his emotions, and so he looks at her like full in the face and makes sure that he's making eye contact and all that. But that's a stretch. We really don't get any sense of him being afraid of her not believing him or his sincerity. So the answer to 4 will be A, and the answer to 5 is C. All right. Moving on. In the passage, Akira addresses Chie with affection, but not genuine love. I don't think that's really what's going on here. I mean, first, it's a culture where people keep their distance from each other. There's not a lot of in-your-face emotional demonstration. You can see that it's very formal, and that Akira even like is a little embarrassed by it not being formal enough. So you can see that it's not really affection what they have for each other. They're strangers to each other. I mean, and obviously not genuine love, but there isn't affection there anyway either, right? Um, B, objectivity but not complete impartiality. I don't think that objectivity would be the right choice of words here. I mean, it just doesn't really apply to the situation that well, judging it by how objective Chie is. I mean, he's asking for her daughter's hand in marriage, so we really don't expect objectivity, and it really isn't there. So I can say B is probably B is just like flat out wrong. C, amusement but not mocking disparagement. So here you also have to be careful with the subject. Who addresses who? Who addresses whom with amusement but not mocking disparagement? So first of all, it's Chie that expresses that we know is amused at Akira, not Akira at Chie. Akira is like maybe a little scared and super serious. He's not amused at all because this is a very important moment for him. Chie is the one that's amused. And also, Chie never addresses Akira with amusement. Well, maybe a little, but even then, she's not really who we're talking about. We're talking about Akira addressing Chie some way. And the only right answer for me is respect, but not utter deference. So we see respect. He respects her. He barely looks her in the eyes, but not utter deference because he obviously didn't follow all of the protocol that was proper for a situation like this. So for number 6, I would say the correct answer is D. Number 7, the main purpose of the first paragraph is to describe a culture. So let's look at the first paragraph again. Akira came directly, breaking all tradition. Was that it? Had he followed form? Had he asked his mother to speak to his father to approach a go-between? Would Chie have been more receptive? So I can see how this sort of sets up a cultural description for us to understand the passage through. It's sort of setting up the sort of type of marriage proposal that this is going to be, or the sort of situation, the context and the frame. So I think A is definitely an option. Criticize a tradition. So yes, there is a mention of tradition, but look at the verb, criticize. It's not criticizing anything. So no, B is wrong because of criticize. Question a suggestion. Nothing was suggested to him. He is asking to himself, if I had done it this way, would it have turned out better? Could I have done this? Could I have done that? Maybe I did this wrong. but he's never questioning a suggestion. Nobody suggested anything to him. So C is wrong. Analyze a reaction. So what's he saying? She was amused. She did this, she did that. Would she have responded better if I had done this, if I had done that? So he's thinking about how she reacted to his proposal and asking himself if he could have done things any better to change that reaction. So really, that's what we're doing here. I mean, yes, sort of describes a culture, could set a cultural flame, but no. What, just like in a straightforward way, what's happening there is he's analyzing a reaction. So for number 7, the answer is D. And this is kind of confusing, so I hope I explained it well. Number 8, as used in line 2, form most nearly means, let's look at line 2. Was that it? Had he followed form? Okay. So form in this case sort of stands for protocol, for due process, for the things that are expected of him in this culture, tradition, right? So it most nearly means appearance. Custom is sort of the same as tradition, so yes, absolutely. Structure, not wrong, because structure is sort of the way things should be done, so not wrong. And nature, no, nature is not the correct answer. So it's either custom or structure, and if we have 2 choices that could be, we go for the most precise one, and that is custom, because structure can refer to many, many, many things, but custom refers to exactly what he's talking about. So my answer for number 8 is B. Number 9. Why does Akita say his meeting with Chie is a matter of urgency? This is a question of being able to recall the facts of the story. So he fears that his own parents will disapprove of Naomi. He never says that. Never says that, never even like almost mentioned his parents, except in the first paragraph where he's mentioning like the protocol that he could have followed, but he never talks about their opinions. So A is, it's just wrong. B, he worries that Naomi will reject him and marry someone else. No, I mean, there's never any mention of that, and it's definitely not the reason why he's in a rush, why it's urgent. C, he has been offered an attractive job in another country. Ding, 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 ding. I mean, I can already say that that's the correct answer because, yeah, he was offered a job in the U.S., in the United States, and so he has to make a decision very quickly. He has to know what his next move is going to be soon. So that's why the proposal is kind of abrupt and he doesn't follow protocol. And D, he knows that Chie isn't aware of his feelings for Naomi. Yes, she is, but that doesn't make it urgent because she wasn't going anywhere. So C is the correct answer for number 9. And number 10, which choice provides the best evidence for the answer to the previous question? Let's look at line 39. I don't want to trouble you. It's not. I mean, it sort of goes with the topic, but it really doesn't make any mention to how urgent it is or anything. Normally, I would approach you more properly, but I've received word of a position. I have an opportunity to go to America as a dentist for Seattle's Japanese community. Yeah, you can kind of see that this is the right answer, right? Because he uses the expression, normally I would do this another way. That's when you get the hint that it's urgent, because he normally would take his time to follow due protocol, but because of this opportunity, he's doing this sort of an unconventional way because he's in a hurry. All right, but we'll just go through the other ones too. 58, 59, depending on your response, I may stay in Japan. Um, yeah, that doesn't really express any urgency to me. 72, 73. Abruptly, his voice turned gentle. I see I've startled you. My humble apologies. Yeah, doesn't make any mention of urgency either. So the right option is B. Normally, community, lines 39 to 42. Okay, so I hope you found this SAT practice enlightening and interesting, as I did. Actually, guys, you have no idea how proud I am of myself because this passage, I took this practice test back in the day when I was going to study for the SAT, and I didn't really do very well at it. It was one of my worst passages in like my entire SAT testing history. So the fact that I'm able to do it now and justify every single answer correctly, I think that kind of qualifies me to teach it, right? At least in my eyes. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this little SAT section, and I'll be doing this every single class now, and maybe even like extra sessions, or I mean, you guys can give me feedback on what you think is best because I'm sort of coming up with this on the go. So I hope you enjoyed it, and let's move on to the little essay reading because that's also something we always do. And so without further ado, I will read this essay for you. Punk rocker philosopher. I am in Oxford Academy's speech and debate team, and both the Parliamentary Debate Division and the Lincoln Douglas Debate Division. I write screenplays, short stories, and opinionated blogs, and I'm a regular contributor to my school literary magazine, The Glue Stick. I have accumulated over 300 community service hours that includes work at homeless shelters, libraries, and special education youth camps. I have been evaluated by the College Board and have placed within the top percentile. But I am not any of these things. I am not the test score, nor a debater, nor a writer. I'm an anti-nihilist, punk rock philosopher, and I became so when I realized three things. One, that the world is ruled by underwear. There is a variety of underwear for a variety of people. You have your iron briefs for your businessmen, your soft cottons for the average, and hemp-based underwear for your environmental romantics. But underwear do not only tell us about who we are, they also influence our daily interactions in ways most of us don't even understand. For example, I have a specific pair of underwear that is wholly worn out but surprisingly comfortable. And despite how trivial underwear might be, when I am wearing my favorite pair, I feel as if I am on top of the world. In any case, these articles of clothing affect our being and are the unsung heroes of comfort. 2. When I realized I cannot understand the world. I recently debated at the Orange County Speech League tournament within the parliamentary division. The specific branch of debate is an hour-long and consists of two parties debating either side of a current political issue. In one particular debate, I was assigned the topic, should nation states eliminate nuclear arms? It so happened that I was on the negative side, and it was my job to convince the judges that countries should continue manufacturing nuclear weapons. During the debate, something strange happened. I realized that we are a special breed of the species, that so much effort and resources are invested to ensure mutual destruction. And I felt that this debate in a small college classroom had elucidated something much more profound about the scale of human existence. In any case, I won first place at the tournament, but as the crowd cheered when my name was called to stand before an audience of hundreds of other debaters, and I flashed a victorious smile at the cameras, I couldn't help but imagine that somewhere at that moment a nuclear bomb was being manufactured, adding to an ever-growing stockpile of doom. And that's when I realized that the world was something I will never understand. When I realized I was a punk rocker philosopher, that's number 3. On one summer night, my friend took me to an underground hardcore punk rock show. It was inside a small abandoned church. After the show, I met and became a part of the small community. Many were lost and in a constant soul search, and to my surprise, many like myself did not have a blue mohawk or a nose piercing. Many were just ordinary people discussing niche string theory and governmental ideologies. Many were also artists creating promotional posters and inventive slogans for stickers. They were all people my age who could not afford to be a part of the record label and did something extraordinary by playing in these abandoned churches, making their own CDs and making thousands of promotional buttons by hand. I realized then that punk rock is not about music, nor is it a guy with a blue mohawk screaming protests. Punk rock is an attitude, a mindset, and very much a culture. It is an antagonist to the conventional. It means that making the best with what you have to contribute to a community. This was when I realized that I was a punk rock philosopher. The world I come from consists of underwear, nuclear bombs, and punk rockers, and I love this world. My world is inherently complex, mysterious, and anti-nihilist. I am David Fan, somebody who spends his weekends debating in a three-piece suit, other days immersed within the punk rock culture, and some days writing opinionated blogs about underwear. But why college? I want a higher education. I want more than just the textbook-fed classrooms of high school. A community which prizes revolutionary ideals, a sharing of multidynamical perspectives, an environment that ultimately acts as a medium for movement, similar to the punk rock community. I do not see college as a mere stepping stone for a stable career, or a prosperous life, but as a supplement for knowledge and self-empowerment. It is a social engine that will jettison us to our next paradigm shift. All right, guys. So I will obviously guide this analysis because there's no one to ask questions to me. So, okay, let's begin by the first question. Did it work? And if it did, how? And why? In my opinion, this did work. This person is a person that I would accept to whatever college I was doing admissions work for. He's pretty impressive. I mean, the level of reasoning that he expresses is profound, and the topics that he talks about are unconventional, and he approaches them from unconventional angles as well, which makes it interesting. He definitely has a little bit of an ego thing going on, which I will talk about a little bit later. But he's also not pretending to be like omnipotent or anything. He's saying, one of the key moments of my life is when I realized that I cannot understand the world. And that just appeals to me. I am a big fan of people who can understand that knowing more only means that you understand that you know less. Like, the more you know, the more you realize how little you know. And I like people like that because it means that you are grounded. It means that you're someone who knows that the world is very complicated and you can never really understand it. All right. So, comments on the tone. I have a little bit of an issue with the tone of this essay because he comes off as a little bit egotistical and full of himself, especially in this paragraph. I think this is, I mean, it's not someone I would want to be friends with necessarily. Later on in the essay, he definitely becomes someone that I would be friends with, but still, he's a little bit of, like, he's a little full of himself for sure. By listing his achievements like this. I told you guys to not do this, by the way. I told you guys to not list them like that, but I mean, this guy is pretty impressive. And he does one thing that everyone who has a big ego but wants to appear that they don't does, and it is this. I did this, and that, and also that. But I discovered that my true value is not any of those things. It is this thing that cannot be measured in achievements. And yes, it works. And I understand his point, and he does it well, but it's also like dude, to make that point, you didn't really need to write every single important piece of your CV, of your resume. So it kind of comes across as a little douchey, that first paragraph, in my opinion. But I'll let it slide because the essay is pretty impressive, and he does sound like a pretty impressive person. But just remember, if you're thinking of doing this sort of thing, just remember, they already see this from your activities section. They already see your most important achievements, and they already see your test scores. So unless there's a real point and a real value to gain from adding these things, don't, because it doesn't really look that good. Okay, so what about the structure? What does he do here? I like this. It's an unconventional structure for the writing piece. He does not go for the usual like paragraph progression of actions. Instead, he starts with this listing of achievements that I don't really like it. But then he goes into who he is. And he says, I became this person when I realized three things. And he does this list. And this is a wonderful strategy in this case. Why? Because it allows him to delve into three different topics, completely different topics, disparate topics that are not similar at all. And they allow him to show three completely different sides of himself. I mean, the first one about the underwear just allows him to show a very quirky, sort of peculiar view of the world that he holds, sort of giving value to underwear. That is something that I really like, by the way. I don't think that this paragraph has too much substance. I think that, I don't like it too much because it really is saying nothing about how underwear really represents different types of personalities. But I appreciate the effort to insert a sort of quirky topic in there. And he does that relatively well. Number two, he gives us a more serious side of him considering the implications of the topics discussed in his debate competition, how he's winning the tournament by talking about how nuclear power should be maintained, which shows us he has this ability to, wait, I'm going to rewind a little bit. So he's talking about why we should conserve nuclear power, like nuclear weapons. But at the same time, he's thinking, oh my God, like, what the hell? Countries are actually constructing these weapons of mass destruction. And like, wow, I'm really never going to understand this world. This paragraph out of the three, I think, is the best one. And why? Let me explain why. This is beautiful because first, it establishes him as humble and realistic and grounded by saying, I will never understand the world, which is something he definitely needed to do after that very, very cocky first paragraph that I didn't really like at all. But this kind of made it a lot better because, I mean, I can understand people being confident because they do a lot of things and they earn that confidence by their achievements. But he knows that despite him being confident in his achievements, he's not overconfident about what he knows, which lets me know that he would not be someone who would like fail because of not recognizing his failures. He might be a little of a difficult personality because of it, but he's not going to fail at his work because of it, because he realizes that he doesn't understand the world completely. Second thing he does really well here is he lets us in and makes us understand exactly how much he's able to sort of abstract himself from a situation and remain neutral and objective despite his moral compass being triggered. He is saying that he doesn't agree with people maintaining nuclear weapons, and yet he won a tournament by arguing exactly the opposite, right? So he's telling us, he's showing us, he's letting us into a very, very valuable skill that he has very well developed, which is remaining neutral and being argued for positions he doesn't actually hold, which is a very valuable skill for college and for many, many professions. Because being professional oftentimes means being able to set aside our emotions and analyze things objectively. So that is a very, very good strategy, and he achieves it really well. Third paragraph, punk rocker philosopher. I like it. It's an original mindset. It's original. It's talking about something that not a lot of people talk about. It's talking about soul searching, about finding oneself, about finding your place in a community that is sort of outside the norm, outside the masses. It's an attractive point of view for someone to have this feeling of being able to see things from the outside, but at the same time he makes it very clear that he loves life, that he likes the world, and that he is engaged and that he does a lot in the world. So it works as a really nice combination of being really in the world, but at the same time being able to look at it from the outside to remain objective. I like it a lot. I can see that this is a very intelligent person, and I would definitely like to have a person such as, what is it, David Fan? Yeah, at my makeshift university, my fictional university. And yeah, that's all I have to say about this. I hope you guys appreciated this analysis, and I'll see you tomorrow in our next class. Bye-bye.